Salutations and welcome, friends, to a Preakness Stakes Spotlight Series. I'm your host for today's episode. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and you can find me on Twitter at the handle at Fail to Menace. Well, like I said, welcome to the Trust the Profits Preakness Stakes Spotlight Series, where we are going to be doing individual deep dives on each potential runner in the 2023 Preakness Stakes. Of course, we just got through the Kentucky Derby, but listen, it's a tight turnaround, less than 2 weeks until they'd run at Pimlico up here in Baltimore. And so we're going through the field, giving you some insight into the different horses that are going to be running in the second jewel of the Triple Crown. Because guess what, folks? We have a lot of new shooters, and that's what this particular video is about, as we are going to deep dive into First Mission. But before we get to that, make sure to press that subscribe button here on YouTube. We got you covered, folks. We had you covered all the way through the Kentucky Derby season. We're going to get you the rest of the way through the Triple Crown. We're going to be with you all summer throughout Saratoga. We're going to get you ready for the Breeders' Cup. We're going to just be with you all year round for horse racing content. So if you're a horse racing fan, handicapping fan, betting fan, international racing fan, domestic racing fan, we got content for you here. Make sure to press that subscribe button. Like this video and comment below with what you think the chances are for First Mission in the 2023 Preakness Stakes. Like I said, we're going to dive deep into First Mission today. And this is a horse that is picking up a ton of buzz. And not just, I think, on horse racing Twitter, but when you go out there and watch this horse's performances, there's some things to certainly be impressed by. He's one of the new shooters that's going to be coming and running in the second jewel of the Triple Crown. And I think it's a very intriguing horse to consider because he's coming in fresh and he's coming in well rested, whereas horses like Mage, horses like Confidence Game, and a few others are going to be coming in, obviously, after just completing that grueling Kentucky Derby. Well, speaking of the Preakness and the probable fields, let's take a look. And this is the current probable fields list for the for the Preakness Stakes, I should say, highlighted, of course, by Mage, who is going to be coming back in all likelihood. Gustavo Delgado and that team has said, as long as this horse has come out healthy, and all appearances are that he's going to be going up to Baltimore for the Preakness Stakes. Confidence Game by Keith DeSorma also going to be coming back. I think a horse a lot of people are very high on, now second back from that long layoff, having last run in the Rebel. Chad Brown's bringing Blazing Sevens there. Of course, this is a horse that qualified for the Kentucky Derby, but was scratched, or removed, I should say, from consideration by Brown. Very similar move he did last year with early voting. Then National Treasure, now back in the Bob Baffert barn, is going to be coming in all likelihood to the Preakness Stakes. This is a horse that had finished fourth in the Santa Anita Derby last time out. And I think his best running is ahead of him. I'm a big fan of that horse. I think he's got a real chance to do the distance. Chase the Chaos is a horse that was an automatic qualification into the Preakness, a win in your end by winning the El Camino Real out there in Golden Gate. And then you get First Mission, who is coming off a win in the Grade 3 Lexington Stakes. And we'll talk about how live that race might have been and what that could potentially tell us for his performance. I think he got a really nice one down with Shug McGahee and Perform. That was an incredible performance last time out by that horse in the Tessio. And then Disarm, in all likelihood, coming back. Steve Asmussen has said at least one of these two, Disarm or Red Route 1, and a possibility of both, are going to be in this race. Feels like Red Route 1 is the more sure bet, but Disarm is still in consideration for this race, having last run fourth in this past weekend's Kentucky Derby. So that just gives you a sense of the field that First Mission is going to be up against here, or at least a pretty close approximation of the field as we know it today for the Preakness Stakes. Well, let's take a little deeper dive into First Mission and that profile. And listen, this is a Brad Cox trained horse. And one of the things you'll notice in that previous slide is there are no other Brad Cox horses under consideration. He had 4 runners in the Kentucky Derby. None of them are moving forward into the Preakness. That includes third place finisher Angel of Empire, who is not going to be going there. Will likely be headed towards maybe the Belmont, but it also seems likely that perhaps the Indiana Derby, perhaps getting ready for the summer up at Saratoga. So we're not sure when we're going to see Angel of Empire next. But like I said, Cox doesn't have any horses in consideration other than First Mission for the Preakness Stakes. Jockeyed by Louis Saez previously. One of the things to note, of course, not a lot of Todd Pletcher horses in that previous slide as well. Forte, of course, a lot of speculation around his status for the Preakness Stakes, being that he is on the Kentucky Derby veterinary list for 14 days. And there is a lot of consternation over the fact that he is unlikely to get out of that veterinary list and therefore not able to run in the Preakness Stakes. Now, from a pedigree standpoint, he's a really intriguing horse. Street sense up top. Okay, so you like that. Medaglia d'Oro Dam underneath. There's some, like I said, some good pedigree here to suggest this is a horse that will like classic distances. Obviously, won last time out, stretching out, and I think can continue to do the same as he progresses in this particular division. Well, let's talk about those past performances because this is really what it's all about. What has this horse done? And you'll notice this horse actually lost his maiden debut effort back in February. But this is a horse that always seemed to be debuting in big spots and running in big spots in those two maiden special weights on big undercard events down at the fairgrounds. Should be pointed out, lost his maiden special weight to Bishop's Bay. Now, Bishop's Bay, if that sounds familiar, that's another Brad Cox horse who is actually running in this weekend's Peter Pan Stakes up at Belmont. Very well thought of horse that came back and won very impressively next time out in an allowance optional claimer. So, no harm in finishing second to a horse of that caliber in the same barn as Bishop's Bay. Now then comes back a month later, runs at the fairgrounds and gets a win and breaks his maiden. Here's the thing. The horse that finished third that day, Quaternion. Quaternion's a horse that just broke his maiden on the Kentucky Derby Day undercard and a $120,000 maiden special weight race. So that maiden special weight race has already come back pretty live with Quaternion showing some class, winning in a big spot on a huge undercard, obviously, on Kentucky Derby Day. And then he makes the big step up. And it should be pointed out that first effort was at 6 furlongs. Then he goes at a mile and a 16th in that second effort where he breaks his maiden and wins. So this is a horse that clearly likes getting stretched out a little bit more. Then goes a mile and a 16th in the Grade 3 Lexington Stakes right before the Kentucky Derby and gets a win, and a really gutty win at that. This was a race that I think showed a lot of maturity, showed a lot of potential, and is the reason why a lot of people are very excited about this horse. You can see those Equibase speed figures going up every single race from a 94 to a 95 to a 103. It should be pointed out, Mage, just as perhaps a point of comparison, Mage, just before he ran in the Kentucky Derby, his last Equibase speed figure in the Florida Derby was a 102. So very similar horses in a lot of ways, actually almost strikingly similar. Their last two races were both 93, I think it was 95 and 102 for Mage, 95, 103 for First Mission in terms of Equibase speed figures. So these are two very similarly structured and raced horses that you've seen ascending in a very similar manner in big spots. Now, that effort at the Lexington Stakes, I think, was particularly noteworthy. First of all, he's going up against very good competition. And I thought it was a really fascinating stretch run there. Arabian Lion, the Bob Baffert horse coming in from California with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard, was on the lead, trying to go gate to wire. Most of the race, First Mission sitting third on the inside rail, and did get the benefit of a nice rail trip. Arabian Lion left the rail wide open for him. Size was able to save all of the ground and go up in the inside. What I will say is, what impressed me was Irad Ortiz Jr. with Arabian Lion really came down hard on him on the inside. Now, some people were crying foul at that performance by Irad. I didn't think it was necessarily foul, but he really made life uncomfortable for First Mission trying to scoot through on the inside rail. And guess what? First Mission didn't really blink and just fit through a very tight hole on the inside rail, went right through, went right by Arabian Lion. Showed a lot of guts, showed a lot of professionalism in that very first graded stakes effort. I think that's why people are excited about what this horse could potentially do when we talk about stepping up into an even bigger spot here in the Preakness. Now, another thing to note in that Lexington Stakes, he ran against a horse, Disarm. Disarm, if you remember, finished third that day. Now, a lot of speculation, Disarm was not all the way cranked up for that performance, but what did we just see out of Disarm? He just finished fourth in the Kentucky Derby. So he turned around and gave a really great performance last time out. Now it's going to be interesting to see, can First Mission take another step forward the way that Mage took a step forward after the Florida Derby and the way Disarm took a step forward after those Lexington Stakes. listen, he's a serious horse that I think you have to really consider. I'm not necessarily as high on him as some people are with First Mission. I've seen people say, listen, he's a gorilla, he's a freak, he's gonna blow him out. I am worried there was still some immaturity that you saw in that last race in the Lexington, never went to the right lead. And so there was concern there in terms of, still got the job done. So there's clearly a ton of natural talent and ability. But again, in a much tougher spot, you're going to have to clean up a lot of these things and make sure that you are tip top for and ship shape for this sort of a big spot. Now, that said, he's a forwardly placed horse. Going back and thinking about the field in place, there aren't necessarily a ton of forwardly placed horses that will be in that field. You figure Confidence Game will be out in front early. National Treasure should be, prominently placed, but is not naturally a front runner. He kind of likes to sit third or fourth. Same thing's true here with First Mission. There's a horse that absolutely does have good gate speed, can get out, and depending on how things break, could find himself in the lead. So he's got the sort of speed to make sure, especially at Pimlico, because if you remember last year, and this is something I will harp on in the 12 days between the time I'm recording this and the Preakness Stakes. Last year, they souped that track up so the early front end speed was just almost unbeatable. And they're going to probably do the same thing again. That's the way they tend to play that track on big days, really favoring front end early speed. He's a horse that could very well be capable of taking advantage of that. He is going to be forwardly placed. He's going to represent among the top 2 or 3 horses in this race. He's going to stay out of trouble. He's going to get probably a pretty nice either inside rail trip or just sitting off the second path of the lead horse. So I think that, he certainly is going to have the race put on a platter in front of him. Just a matter of whether or not he can execute and be good enough to do it. But certainly a very, very talented colt, and one that we're going to be excited to watch here in the Preakness Stakes. Well, that's going to do it for me today. Make sure to press that subscribe button here on YouTube to get all of our great content on Trust the Profits. Make sure to throw me a follow on Twitter at the handle @FailToMenace. Make sure to like this video. Let us know what you think of First Mission. And remember to come back for all of the other Spotlight series for the Preakness Stakes as we go through the entire field. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you it's now post time.